ayes have it. Order, order. We now move on to a rubbish debate about litter on motorways, and I call on Sir Mike Penning to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and hopefully we can, on a very serious subject, also have some calming measures on this, if you know what I mean. Other colleagues have indicated to me that they were going to join the debate this afternoon. So, Mr. Chair, I wonder if you could bear with them if some of them arrive a little later than we start. My constituency is boundaried by the M1, the M25 and the A41. It is an embarrassment to me as their constituency MP and to being an MP in general terms at the state of the rubbish which I freely admit has probably been thrown out the windows of cars by car users, passengers as well as drivers. Some of it has come off the back of refuse lorries, inappropriately not having the correct tarpaulins down to stop it happening. Whatever the reason is, it will start to disappear in the next few weeks. It's not going anywhere. It's just that the grass is growing and the weeds are growing and it will cover it up. But it doesn't go anywhere. It is still not only a hindrance but a danger to our wildlife. In some of the areas where the motorways go, these are areas of our outstanding natural beauty. The wildlife rely very much. And in my spare time, I love bird watching, Mr. Chair. And it frightens me when you look at some of the nests, especially at the end of the seasons, when we do start clipping our hedgerows and other such things, as to what the birds think is safe to put into their nests. And invariably, of course.
Well, thank you, Honourable Member, for giving way and for securing this important debate. Anyone who knows me will know that littering is my biggest bugbear, and it's infuriating to see. And a key concern that has been relayed to me from highways workers is the health and safety risk litter poses to them when they have to clean it up. So does the Honourable Member agree that this is an issue that isn't given enough consideration?
I think not only, I thank my friend for her intervention, I not only think it's not taking enough consideration, but it is a national disgrace that some of the, I mean, in parts of the country, perhaps I should stop. Why have I specifically picked on the motorways? Well, actually, the Highways England or Highways Agency or whatever they want to call themselves today, because they've renamed themselves several times since I was the Road Minister. I don't know why they spent so many thousands of pounds of taxpayers' money renaming themselves. If you've got a decent brand, you don't rename it. If you've got a bad brand, you rename it. It seems like exactly what Highways England, Highways Agency or Highways something has been doing. But they have a legal responsibility for their network. Not all motorways. There are some A roads on the Highways England's network. And it is their legal responsibility. Now, let's start by saying, yes, we should have better enforcement. Yes, we should use the technology that we have. Yes, if we can prosecute people for speeding 2 miles, 3 miles over the speed limit, something I'm all for, I was a Transport Minister, we can actually have cameras in places, the same cameras in places, that are actually capable of prosecuting the person that throws that. I've seen footage, I'm sure colleagues have seen footage, where there is the person on the motorway, driving down the road, there's the card, there's the number plate, there's the face, there's the phone. It's exactly the same technology, actually, if they're chucking it out. The penalties probably, almost certainly, I say to the Minister, need to be stronger. Perhaps we should do something not dissimilar that we did when I was the Minister, when we brought in the driver awareness course. Because fines weren't working, points weren't working, but actually the evidence to show on the driver awareness course is that drivers do actually drive better and, frankly, slower after they've done such a course. But at the end of the day, we've got to do two things. We've got to educate people, which the driver awareness course and that sort of course could do. But at the same time, we've got to actually make sure that the person or organisation that is responsible for these highways, that's why I specifically picked the motorways, because it's a single body. It's not like in our constituencies where it could be the borough council, the districts council, the county council, the unitary authority. In the case of motorways, and some of the A roads, they are legally responsible. And they're legally responsible under the Act, Section 89 of the 1990 Environment Act. They make them absolutely responsible. And we've got to the ridiculous stage that actually individuals, and now here I will talk, if I can, about John Reid and the Clean Up Britain coming, are almost certain to use the same Act, but Section 91 of the Act, to take highways, what they call today, England, something, to court. That's all of our rights to do so, that we can actually, under the Act, say that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is clearing up the mess on our highways. And frankly, when I called this debate, or I asked permission to call this debate, I've been really thrilled by not only the excellent paper produced by the House of Commons Library, John Reid's Clean Up Britain, the Policy Exchange, the RSC Foundation, and at this time I thank the Sunday Express for helping to highlight this issue last weekend in their paper. And they've all come together to simply say, well, what can we do to actually stop this blight, predominantly on the English countryside, from getting worse and worse? And as I said earlier on, it will start to be covered over soon by the plants when they grow, but in the autumn, when the frost comes, they'll die, and there it'll all be. What surprised me enormously is some of the commentary coming from the National Highways, as they're called today. They produced this really lengthy paper saying that they actually regularly check the highways. And some, let me just look at it, 60% plus don't have any rubbish on them. All I say is they should have got a Specsavers or other bodies that are available to check their eyesight when they drive back and forth to work or when they're on our highways, including the staff the Honourable Lady was referring to. Because this is not only a danger to our wildlife, not only is it the plastics. I've seen tins on the side of the road that have been there for so many years, even the aluminium tins are starting to degrade. Plastic doesn't degrade in the same sort of way. But to the staff that are out there clearing it up. Now, there has to be road closures, there has to be, it done safely. Interestingly, Mr. Holloway, in other countries, they seem to have solved this problem quite well. Any of us that go on holiday this summer to Germany, France, Spain, their highways are not covered in trash. You go to Florida, which many people from this country will go to, and they're very large 5-6 lane roads. Hedges and the grass are not covered in trash. And they're certainly not all chopped up when the grass cutters come along and they haven't picked any of the litter up. And we have to ask ourselves why. Is it a cultural thing? Or is actually the organisation that's responsible legally to actually clean it up doing it? I think, frankly, if someone has broken the law and they get a community project, I can't think of a better way of paying back into the community than actually being in the team, done safely, going out, clearing the rubbish from the sides of our roads. And I'm told when I was the minister, in the minister's position, that wasn't possible because it wasn't safe. Well, I used to be the health and safety minister as well in a different time. It could be made safe. And if it's safe for the workers to do it, and picking up some of the atrociously horrible stuff they have to pick up, which we won't go into in this debate, but you use your imaginations of what goes thrown out the windows of cars. So why, the question has to be, why isn't the National Highways as an organisation taking this seriously? Because they can't be taking it seriously. They're giving contractors contracts. They're not actually monitoring that. In an FOI request to Mr. John Reid, they came back and said, we don't undertake audits of our contractors' work for litter clearance. Well, how do they know then that 60% of the roads are clear? If they're not monitoring their own contracts, I don't know, it baffles me. Now, the Department of Transport have, under the Secretary of State, key performance indicators for the highways. What are they going to call today? National highways. But actually, litter is not one of them. It's just a PI. It's just part of something. It's not that important. And I would say to the Minister, I think it is that important. How can you have a key performance indicator under the contract issued to National Highways by the Secretary of State that doesn't actually take into consideration the legal responsibility they have to the public? This is public money being spent on behalf of the public through the Secretary of State.
Will my honourable friend give way?
Of course I will.
On this point, I thank my honourable friend for giving way and for securing this really important debate today. And many of my constituents in Old Bexley and Sidcup expressed many of the concerns that's already been outlined by honourable friend for Hemel Hempstead. But on this point exactly around legal responsibilities and KPIs, we also have an issue that isn't just applicable to motorways but also to A roads. So in my constituency of Old Bexley and Sidcup, we have the A2 and the A21, where there is general confusion around who is legally responsible for the cleanliness of the litter from the hard shoulder and the verges. And Transport for London often say that it is the local council's responsibility, and local councils often dispute that because obviously it is a Transport for London road. So does my honourable friend agree that alongside strengthening those KPIs, we also need to have legal clarity about who is responsible for litter on the motorways and our A roads? And also I echo his comments and enthusiasm for encouraging kind of the ability for community volunteer litter pickers that want to go out and want to help but are told no because of health and safety.
Penning.
I think my honourable friend Rintoul, there was several points there that I completely agree with. As I said earlier on in my commentary, not all of National Highways' responsibility is motorways. They have some A roads. In my own part of the world, what was the M10 is the 414, but they still have the responsibility for that road. I don't think they know that because they've not been anywhere near it since, I think, the day that it was actually demotorised. I mean, I wrote to the Secretary of State and I wrote to then Highways England, I think, saying, is there any chance that they could come along and pick up some of their signage, which is laying on the side of the roads, going rusty, and actually a blight to animals and safety. If someone pulled off the side of the road in an emergency, it's still there today. So the point I think my honourable friend is making on who is responsible is actually quite crucial. I mean, when I was a roadsmith, I didn't realise that the M10, and I live right next to it. The M10 is no longer the M10, it's the 414. That bit I knew, but I didn't know the Highways Agency had kept responsibility for it. And there are several other A roads that are. So that could be resolved very simply by the Minister dropping my colleague a line saying that the legal responsibility for the A2 is X. I'm sure the Minister could get his officials to do that. That's what I might have done if I'd have been the Minister, but who knows. But the other point he made, look, there are lots of volunteers out there today going out picking litter up, and I've got them in my own constituency, and they do a fantastic job. There's that issue, and it's actually the payback issue. People that are blighting my community in myriad of different ways and then get community order should have to be supervised out there cleaning the roads. One of the reasons, if you go to Florida, Mr. Holloway, is, and you drive down those wonderful clean roads is because they actually use people that are incarcerated to actually go and clear the roads. They're not dangerous criminals, but they are people that are in for short-term sentences. And of course, they're not chained up or anything like that. But if they scarper, as the sort of language my grandmother would have used, if they scarper, eventually, of course, they will be found. But at the end of the day, they will not have any parole. So they're not going to be attacked if they scarper. But actually, they're already starting to pay back. Now, in our open prisons, why couldn't we have that today in parts of the country? It'd be slightly different than some of the open prisons in, say, Norfolk, because there's no motorways in Norfolk. But I fully understand that it's payback, which should mean payback. I'm sure the Minister might say to me, well, actually, the contracts are fairly set in stone over a period of time with National Highways. And the KPI is set. But actually, if the Minister looks carefully at the legislation, the Secretary of State has the powers at any time to deviate the contract. So the KPIs could be changed. I think this is an issue of national importance. we can talk about it being rubbish, trash, but we have some of the most beautiful countryside in the world, in my opinion. We should cherish it. There are people demonstrating out there yesterday and today because they passionately believe. I don't agree with their motives of what they're trying to do. I do agree in that we have to protect our countryside. And we have, over the years, put lots of roads right the way through some of our countryside. And that countryside is being blighted day in, day out, day in, day out. And frankly, looking at the correspondence, particularly from National Highways, I'm sorry, miss, I don't think they get it. They just talk to me. In one of the briefings, they're talking about the responsibility of local authorities. Well, no local authority in the country has responsibility for clearing up the motorways. It's them. The title of this debate was specific not to have that debate about local government. It was to say the narrative here is purely at Highways England. There are lots of things that are probably not fully in the bailiwick of the Minister, and I share his frustration in some of that, because I used to sit in that chair and think, I'd love to have done that and I would love to do this. But actually, if we have the will, we have the way. Fines need to be increased. If people want to throw stuff out of car windows, some of it the most abhorrent products that we don't want to particularly discuss today, they should be penalised for it. But similarly, if you have the legal responsibility in law set by this place, that it is your job to clear up that mess, go and give them some powers if you want to go and use the cameras in a way in which we can actually enforce it. But it is actually, you can't cop out of this. It is actually in statute whose responsibility it is. The KPI can be changed so that it's part of, so the regulator can step in and actually say you're not fulfilling your contracts. Because if it doesn't happen, we're going to have individuals of the public taking this organisation, National Highways, funded by the British taxpayer, to court for a breach of the act that they are legally responsible to do. That, to me, is a crying shame, but if it happens, I will fully support that commitment to go to the magistrates' courts. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered litter on motorways.